Okay, well, hello and welcome to our Young Carers in Schools Guest webinar, which will look at overcoming the barriers to engaging with the families of young carers. My name is Jess, and I'm the Schools Policy and Development Officer here at Carers Trust, and I'm very delighted to say that we're joined today by Tina Vidovic, Student Manager and Young Carer Lead from Gold Awarded Didcot Girls School in Oxfordshire, as well as Liz Roberts, Senior Young Carer Worker from York Carer Centre. Thank you both for giving up your time to be here today. And thank you once again for joining us. So we appreciate that many of you here today, similar to many other schools and professionals all across England, will all be at different starting points when it comes to working with young carers and their families. Some may have begun forming and developing key relationships with these families successfully already, and others may have just started identifying young carers and their families who perhaps don't engage with school and are looking at different ways to support them. Having contact with and building relationships can be particularly difficult when working with young carers and their families. And there can be many reasons which can cause families not wanting to get in contact or talk to schools. This could be due to the stigma that they feel surrounds young carers. Some young carers don't want to be seen different to their peers, and so they don't draw attention to their caring role and their family situation. Or a family may believe that the school will show no interest in their family circumstances, or they might be worried that their family will be split up and that their children will be taken into care. Or perhaps they see just no reason to engage with school as they don't believe that any positive action will occur from doing so. Adopting a whole school approach is essential to building on these relationships with families and to overcome some of the barriers as to why they don't access support. Working to build on these relationships as part of developing a positive whole school ethos will also help to identify hidden young carers and help to dispel common concerns that some young carers and their families can have about having the school or perhaps other agencies involved as well. So, as I mentioned, we are joined today by Tina from Didcot Girls School and Liz from York's Carer Centre, who both have extensive experience of successfully engaging young carers and their families. Tina is Student Manager and Young Carer Lead at Didcot Girls School, and who has led on the implementation of the school's whole school approach for young carers since October last year, when she took over from the previous Young Carer Lead. The quality of the school's approach to identifying and supporting young carers has been recognised through their achievement of the Young Carers in Schools Gold Award in July last year, of which they were only one of 5 schools across England to achieve this at the time. And they've also been awarded the Gold Young Carers School Standards, which is a local award scheme run by Oxfordshire County Council, which is great. Liz is a Senior Young Carer Worker at York Carer Centre and has over 8 years' experience working with young carers and their families. York Carer Centre is a network partner of Carers Trust and works in partnership with carers, statutory and voluntary organisations to ensure carers throughout York have access to confidential information, advice and support. And they also work with carers to influence positive change in service delivery with local government, employers and health providers. So thank you again for both of you for joining us here today. We really do appreciate you taking the time to do so. And just in today's webinar, we're going to have the opportunity to hear from Tina and Liz about some of the challenges they have faced when working with young carers and their families. We're going to discover how they have worked to overcome these challenges and hear their top tips. We will look at the importance of adopting a whole school approach and how this can help you engage with young carers and their families. We're going to be able to share the tools available through the Young Carers in Schools programme to make implementing this approach as achievable and as manageable as possible. So, enough from me. I'm going to hand the floor over now to Tina and Liz. Just got a few questions that we'd like to put to you and kind of discuss as we go. Our first question is, what challenges have you faced when working with young carers and their families? So either of you can go first. It doesn't matter.
So I'll start, I'm Liz. I think the main challenge for us that I find is the term young carer. And whenever I meet families and other professionals, I kind of like to start with that and say, I think the word carer especially is particularly for young people. It's confusing because you know, it's the word that we use for people who get paid to look after people, but also it's the same word that we use for people who look after members of their family. So I think for all carers, but for young carers in particular, that's really difficult to get their heads around to start with. So I think it's really important to kind of put that on the table a little bit and say, I'm really sorry that it's called this and that it's confusing, but we've kind of got to run with it and just kind of make sure they understand that. And then the second challenge with that, I think, is that it is a label, and often labels are negative. but what we try and do and try and encourage schools and as many other people as possible to do is make it as positive as possible. You know, obviously the young people don't want any member of their family to be unwell, but actually there's lots of positives that come from being a young carer. So we try and put as much of a positive spin as possible on it to kind of reduce the effect of that label.
Hello, it's Tina here. Here at Didcot Girls' School, the main problem that we've had is actually identifying the families. When the girls say to us that they're a young carer, and then we approach the family, the parents sometimes say that they don't do a caring role. They can't understand that the emotional impact of having someone really ill is actually also impacting on the child's school life. You know, and just with one of the girls that we've got, she takes quite a lot of responsibility for her brother. She says that is just what she has to do as being a sister. And the parents also say, well, you know, normal families, the sisters look after the brothers and vice versa. But this young lady actually does quite a lot of taking him to the park and actually being around him, caring for him when she would prefer to be out with her friends.
Definitely, thank you. I think, yeah, very, very key points about kind of the challenges of identifying young carers to begin with, and also kind of like you mentioned, Liz, having that label, which, like you say, can be positive and negative, but kind of dispelling those kind of fears about what it may mean to be a young carer. And really great to kind of hear that both of you work towards kind of making it a positive thing and kind of communicating that to families. Thank you. Second question is, what have you found has worked well and what hasn't worked so well?
Oh, it's Tina. Something that's worked really well is actually taking on this gold standard, because it's made us realise as a school that we need to involve primary schools and work during the transition period, because the primary schools have that daily contact with parents, and the parents are then much more keen, I suppose, to talk to the primary school teachers if we're with them, and then we can actually tell them what we can do for the girls when they come up here to Didcot Girls' School.
Yeah, so I think what works well is just being as open as possible with the families. I think it's really important to understand as much as you can about what's going on. It's often really difficult because, you know, you only know what they tell you. But try and be as open as possible with them and give them the opportunity to share as much as possible. Also, if it's possible, be able to share other carer stories, you know, especially within schools. Say, oh, well, we did this for one student, this one young person, this really worked well for them. You know, we can do that for you as well. It kind of makes them feel less isolated, less like they're on their own, and more confident in the support that they can access.
Brilliant, thank you. Sorry. We've had one question come in which kind of reflects on the back of those questions, and somebody has asked, how have you succeeded in identifying young carers in school and getting staff on board? I'm finding this hard, but especially hard in engaging Key Stage 4 students. Tina, would you have any advice?
Yeah, the older students were quite difficult to engage to begin with, and in fact, even last week I had a girl come to me and say, I think I probably do need to register as a young carer. I do this for my mum, she's got multiple sclerosis. How we did it in the first place is we actually went through PD lessons. We talked about what a young carer was, what their role was, and then asked them to identify themselves to the teacher or to the head of year, and then we did it that way. Then the young carer lead would then go and talk to them and start the registration process and contact the parents. We also do a questionnaire each year that goes out to young carers, asking of what their roles are and how much it impacts on school. This is then actually asked sort of asked them questions themselves, and they've gone back and said to their friends, but you do that. And they've come and identified friends themselves.
Definitely. So it's kind of, like important to raise awareness and have that regular communication to parents. And I think once a whole school approach, like a positive ethos surrounding school and young carers is starting to be developed, you will find, hopefully over time, that young carers are, all right, self-identifying, they're engaging with school support, they're communicating with staff. But in my experience as well, I have found that older students are less likely to engage with perhaps drop-in sessions or things that are run specifically for young carers. And I think a lot of schools do face that challenge there. But I think definitely, like you said, Tina, raising that awareness and again just allowing them to be open, just reminding them that they're not on their own, like you were saying, Liz, and just it takes time, unfortunately, but once you started on that journey, you can only just develop it and see how well that goes.
Yeah, I think it's good as well to have as many kind of options for them as possible. I know that in some of the schools we work at, they've got like a suggestions box, they've got a young carers email that you can email to, you can like just leave a note for a particular teacher, or there's lots of different ways that people would feel more comfortable than perhaps just kind of coming up or filling in the questionnaire or whatever. There's lots of other ways that you can perhaps engage with the young people as well.
Brilliant. Yeah,
definitely. The one thing I've found really helpful with the younger girls is I have a drop-in session on one lunchtime where I have lots of craft activities and games available for them, and that's helped them sort of settle into secondary school life, which has been much easier. But that is only attended usually by the younger girls. The older ones tend to sort of come to me and ask for extra help for revision and things like that. So we've set up after-school revision clubs for them, where the computers are available and we have sort of food and drinks available for them. Brilliant. So that they can stay throughout after school.
I see. Brilliant. So having lots of different kind of avenues of how...
Yeah, and it just depends on sort of the age of the student and that their own particular needs, really.
Definitely. Thank you. We've had another question come in just before I move on to our next one. It says, what have the main benefits been of identifying and working with young carers?
The attendance has definitely gone up for the young carers because we've put in extra things for them. Their attainment as well. There has been such an increase in attainment because the young carers are identified on all of our support systems and monitoring systems, so staff can look straight away and sort of filter the young carers, and we can then actually put in targeted support for them. At the moment with our Year 11s preparing for exams, we're actually sort of helping them with bus fares and things so they can stay for after school sessions. We're putting in Easter school for them so that they can actually sort of spend a little bit more time where they're not in their caring role, so they can come into school and have that time where they can use the computers and actually revise with teachers and in the peace and quiet, really.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. Thank you both. Our next question is, how have you had to adapt your approach to working with young carers and their families? Has it been?
I mean,
go on.
Yeah, I mean, as a school, we've taken on a whole school approach. So we've had staff training, and all staff are made aware of who the young carers are, and so their seating plans are all annotated, and as I say, their attendance, their attainment are just so easily available because of how we've set up systems. It has been much better.
Have you had to do anything different specifically to engage with young carers and their families as compared to what you might have had to have done with other vulnerable students, would you have thought, or have you kind of just used the same practices?
Not really, because I mean we have got student managers linked in with the year groups here at Didcot Girls, and I mean our main approach is encouraging all parents to be open with us. So we make lots of contact with parents anyway. I suppose parents' evenings and things like that, the things we have adapted, if the young carers don't book appointments, the student managers then phone up and actually offer to collect parents to bring them in for parents' evenings, or we visit with the child to see the teachers and then report back to the parent. So it's just been little adaptations, but then we would do that with most vulnerable girls anyway.
Yeah. We've had another question come in. It says, how do you deal with a situation where a child identifies himself as a young carer, but the parent or carer does not accept this identification?
Right. We did have that last year, and what we did, we just sort of approached the parent and said, what we can do as a school to help young carers. The parent didn't agree to have any of the official paperwork done, but as a school we still supported that young carer. And then beginning of this year, the parent actually needed some help with financial help to get access to a laptop for the students so they could do their work at home. And we actually have loaned computers for young carers, and when the parent realised that, they actually then said, well, maybe we do need your help, could you support us in that way? And then they were happy to then go with everything else that was on offer.
Brilliant.
I think that's where school support is so important, because other services are voluntary, and if a young carer's parent didn't want them to be part of our service, then that would be really up to them. But they're in school anyway, and so if you're able to support them just as a young person, not even as a young carer, just with whatever it is that they need, then that's going to be really important, especially if they're in a family who are kind of reluctant to accept other support from any other service.
Definitely. And I think had another question come in, thank you both, saying that they're really struggling to identify and engage Key Stage 3 boys. So girls tend to engage in the group well, but this is not appearing to be successful with the boys. And any suggestions that you may have would be gratefully received. So looking at how
We're only a girls' school.
Yeah, so, but Liz, have you had any experience of kind of, because I know when we met before, a lot of boys got involved in our event that we did, and do you find that's the same near you and with your service?
I actually think in the schools where we do like the intensive work, there's actually more boys than there is girls. And I'm not sure why. But yeah, I mean, for the boys in particular have really got on board with kind of supporting the whole school. They've been involved in assemblies, they've been involved in like training to other professionals, they've been involved in, we spoke to all the head teachers. They've really got a lot out of kind of speaking about being a young carer, and enjoyed like showing everybody else what they can do, and raising the positive profile of young carers within their school as well, really. So they really have got on board with that. I think perhaps all you need is one or two keen ones, and then the others follow.
Definitely, yeah, kind of set the mark to get involved. And I think going back to kind of what we were saying about having different avenues or different ways that young carers can get involved, or they can communicate with you, is perhaps a way that might encourage boys as well. So perhaps if you've got things that you think boys might be interested in and coming along to be able to speak to you about, but kind of, and also having the chance to kind of consult with them, I guess, is to see what they would find most beneficial within your school, and perhaps try and find out why they're perhaps not engaging, which I know can be difficult. But thinking about those other options as well. Lovely. Our next question is, why is it important to keep trying to work or support young carers and their potentially hard to reach families?
I guess the hard to reach families are the ones that need it the most often. So it's the most important to work as hard as you can to reach them and support them as much as possible.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we try, to support girls in the best way that we can, and having the student managers build up that relationship with parents is really good, and it helps then in the classroom.
We've had another question come in that says, have you referred young carers on for a statutory young carers assessment from the council? And I know this can vary differently between local authority, but have either of you had experience of local authority assessments yet or to date?
Yeah, so I mean we have a fairly new procedure, but yeah, we are taking the young carers assessments on behalf of our local authority as part of an agreement, and so it's like a whole package of assessment and support that's delivered by our service for them.
Brilliant.
I mean, here at school we refer families onto surgeons, and they then come and do the assessment.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. And our last one, do you have any top tips? Which I guess it's kind of covered in what we've talked about, but if you could define it into two most essential things.
Good relationships with the parents, and just sort of keep persevering.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think just treat everybody as an individual. Every family is different, and everybody kind of deals with different situations in different ways. So, just bear that in mind as much as possible.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you both. And thank you for submitting your questions as well. But we'll have time towards the end. We're edging ever closer to the end, and there will be time for you to submit any more questions that you may have. Thank you both, Tina and Liz. They will stay on the line for us as well. So as Tina and Liz have set up kind of lots of different top tips and kind of different strategies to engage with families, so whether that's building relationships with families, getting them on board, kind of getting rid of the young carer label, but also what they've both mentioned is kind of having that importance of the whole school approach and getting everybody involved and aware of young carers. And that's kind of what Young Carers in Schools programme really, that is the backbone to our programme and what we think is the most crucial approach to identifying and supporting young carers. So a whole school approach involves implementing a variety of actions to ensure that pupils with caring responsibilities are understood, identified, listened to and supported by a school who is informed about young carers and the issues that they may face. And these are the fundamental things that young carers, as well as national research has told us, are the most important things to have in school. And this whole school approach is essential to raising the outcomes, attainment and well-being of young carers, and Tina has mentioned this already, and is especially important when identifying young carers and building effective relationships with them and their families. Ensuring support is available to young carers is vital to breaking down barriers in engaging with pupils. Having provision in place to enable pupils with caring roles to be identified, listened to and supported will help young carers and their families to feel valued and respected by the school, and in turn enable them to feel safe and confident to access support. An essential part of adopting a whole school approach is ensuring that all staff are young carer aware, that they understand the barriers to education that young carers may face and know the simple things that they can do to identify, support and signpost young carers as part of their wider roles within the school. And to effectively identify and support young carers, the school needs to take advantage of the whole host of different relationships and forms of contact that staff across the school will have with pupils and their families. And this will help to build a bigger picture of a pupil's life and potentially provide you with multiple avenues that you could use to contact with a family who may be hard to reach. Developing effective working relationships and information sharing protocols with other agencies is also really important to reaching hard to reach families of young carers. Schools will have relationships with many agencies in the local community, which may be being accessed by pupils in your school. So having these relationships in place with clear information protocols will enable channels of communication to be opened up, and where appropriate, information about specific pupils could be shared between agencies. And then following on from that, where pupil progress meetings involving pupils with caring responsibilities are taking place, it is important that insights from direct engagement with pupils by school staff and external agencies are gathered prior to the meetings and should be considered whether it's appropriate for those other agencies to attend. And perhaps a young carer service or a different agency your school is working with could act as a voice for the young carer and their family, and if necessary, services involved could perhaps engage or help to encourage young carers to engage with the school if they're not doing so already. As you develop a whole school approach, there are some key messages that we think it's really important to share with families to help ensure they feel safe and confident to access support. And these key messages are really important as it reminds pupils and their families that their school recognises and values young carers and that there's support available to them. So we think these key messages are to have a clear definition of a young carer, be able to share what tasks young carers may undertake, sharing the names of designated staff responsible for young carers, sharing the examples of support available both at school and externally, so via your young carers service, what parents or carers can do if they think their child is a young carer, and how to get in contact with the school. It's really important that these messages are communicated regularly and consistently to young carers and their families, as it's key to remember that a pupil can become a young carer at any time, therefore this information needs to be available all of the time. The different ways that schools can disseminate these messages could be perhaps on the school website, on parent or pupil notice boards, in the school prospectus, or in newsletters which go home. And to help make this as easy as possible, you can find notice board material and exemplar newsletters in our step-by-step guide, which if you haven't got a hard copy of, you can find and download completely free off our website, youngcarersinschools.com. Adopting a whole school approach is broken down through the Young Carers in Schools programme into key steps that schools can take to make this as easy and as manageable as possible. These 10 key steps are also in the step-by-step guide, as well as the extensive range of support available through the programme, such as the tools in the guide or our webinars or our training events, are all available free for you to use to help support you in implementing this approach. Key actions that you can put into place straight away to begin adopting a whole school approach and overcoming the barriers to engage with young carers and their families are to complete our baseline review. And this will enable you to identify what you may have in place already, be able to celebrate this, and then prioritise your next steps by giving each action a RAG status. We then ask that you follow this key action with addressing the red or amber areas that you've identified in the review and develop them using the tools and support available through the programme. You don't have to be looking to apply for the Young Carers in Schools Award to be able to access the tools or adopt a whole school approach. The programme is open to all schools across England, whether you're working towards an award or not. However, achieving a Young Carers in Schools Award is a great way to demonstrate to pupils and their families that your school's hard work and provision for young carers has been recognised and accredited by leading charities. This in turn could also help you to engage with families as they may feel more encouraged to access support and engage with school knowing that their school has been awarded. So we now have time to answer any questions that you may have, and I think we've had a couple come in already. Let me just look through. This one says, is there any additional funding available to school to help support young carers? We're a school secondary with limited funding, and I would like to expand the resources and support we can offer. Unfortunately, Carers Trust can't offer funded support, but what we can do is like I mentioned, as part of the Young Carers in Schools programme, is lots of free support, which is full of resources and essential kind of key steps and tools and exemplar things that you might be able to use, and which is completely free, which is all available on our website, youngcarersinschools.com. But unfortunately, funding is sparse across England, and unfortunately, Carers Trust can't provide additional funding. I don't know whether Tina or Liz, you've had experience of having funding for schools or funding for support for young carers.
We have a little bit of funding from our local council where we first set up, but that's run out now, so we just fund ourselves.
I think it's really hard, isn't it? There's very little funding for very little at the moment. But one thing that we have done with some of the schools in York is done fundraising and awareness raising at the same time. So we've done cake sales and non-uniform days and that sort of thing that can raise money to then go back in and support the young carers. And also, you know, it's really great at awareness raising as well.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So the other thing that we sometimes use, we do use the pupil premium money sometimes to help with the young carers.
Fantastic. Yeah, so keeping that kind of money involved in mind as well. When I used to work as a young carers lead in a secondary school, and one of the things that we did, because we were aware that funding was limited, was we approached kind of other groups or clubs in our local area to see if they were able to support us, and we found that the Rotary Club were able to give us some money. They had some money set aside for vulnerable students. And we kind of put a bid in, and they were able to grant us £500 to help support our young carers. So I would definitely suggest using the free tools available through the programme, but also kind of just assessing and seeing if any other agencies or groups or communities, community clubs within your local area may be able to help you with that as well. It's always worth a chance. We've had another question come in that says, has anyone developed a carers charter for their schools, and if so, have they been beneficial in supporting carers? We've developed one, but have only involved one school so far. If the person that submitted that question was able to kind of explain a little bit more about their charter, I think that would be really helpful, if you wouldn't mind, and I could read it out. Somebody has asked, do you use your school nurse to encourage identifying young carers?
We use our school nurse and the school counsellors to identify them to us, as well as all members of staff.
Brilliant. Is the school nurse kind of advertised around school, or how did you go about establishing that relationship? Was it kind of already there to begin with, or?
Well, what we do, school nurse and school counsellors are all invited into assemblies at the beginning of the year to introduce themselves, and then through the PD lessons we tell the students that they can come to any of us and identify themselves if they feel that that is what they want to do.
Thank you. Somebody has asked, can you explain a little bit more about the pupil premium funding? Do you get more when you identify them? At the moment, young carers aren't included in the pupil premium criteria. No. Carers Trust and other charities and organisations across England have been petitioning to make sure they are included. But what we usually find is that many young carers are eligible for pupil premium, or perhaps they're also on the free school meals list, or they're on the SEM register. So there's other perhaps intervention or other groups that they're part of, which you could tap into. So you may be working with young carers who are receiving pupil premium funding, and kind of I would suggest looking at seeing whether that funding is available for that pupil and how you might use that to support their caring role, if that's something that you've identified needs to be put in place. But unfortunately they aren't included in the criteria for pupil premium at the moment. But as I say, we are working very hard to make sure that they are included, because we do think it's a very essential and key part to get schools to be working with and supporting young carers further. So I hope that helps a little bit.
I would say that about 70% of our girls that are young carers are on pupil premium because of free school meals.
Wow, 70%, that's huge. Yeah, so I guess it's just looking at what other groups that they fit into that your school is monitoring. Yeah, definitely. One school has just said that they've had notification that they've received the Bronze Award. Fantastic, that's great to hear that you've received that during this webinar. Congratulations, that's brilliant. And we've had a comment again about the Carers Charter. So they're saying their Carers Charter has been written by a Carers Task Force to get schools to sign up to effectively commit to your aims. Oh, fantastic! You said that you're happy to send it to me to share it with others. We're looking to get other services to sign up, and that's from Kirklees Young Carers as well. That'd be brilliant. Thank you so much. I know he's asked this question, but I don't want to name them. But I will be in touch after this webinar. Thank you. I think that's going to be a great resource to be able to share with schools. Thank you.
I suppose in Oxfordshire, they started before we got involved with the Carers Trust, you know, we did start with Oxfordshire's awards, and they put everything in together, trying to encourage primary and secondary schools to be part of it. And it's all being written as it works. You know, it's a working document, I suppose. That's what I want to say, really. So it's been written as all the time and added to.
And kind of developing as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we have no other questions or no other comments, I think we're happy to end. I'd just like to say a massive thank you again to both Tina and Liz. Thank you so much for being here today. I think it's been really insightful and incredibly useful to hear from both of you about how to kind of be working with young carers and how schools can use your top tips to kind of develop their provision and perhaps start overcoming some of those barriers that we've talked about. So thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for all of you for joining us as well today so much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.